and well, and they're living in Berlin. She is a cocktail waitress. He had a part in a Fassbinder-film, and they sit around at night now, drinking schnapps and gin. He says I've wasted my life on our stupid pleasure, when my one and only love was the key.
Here, for the first and only time, Benjamin faltered. He tried to take the slope. He failed. And then he said in formal tones that it was beyond his capacity. Jose and I placed him between us, his arms around our shoulders. We dragged him and his briefcase up the slope. He breathed heavily, but he made no complaint. He only squinted now and again in the direction of the black bag.
The world is the German word is zerstreut. It's dispersed in fragments. And in these fragments, the fragments of the world that God has now turned his back on, as it were. In these fragments reside certain presences which attest to the former existence of their divine character. And you cannot actively go about to discover these divine presences, but they can be revealed. You know, Freud always used the expression picklocks to describe how he tried, the different ways that he tried to get into the unconscious. In other words, as a thief kind of trying to figure out different ways to get through a door. There was always the dream, the joke, the Fehlleistung, the parapraxis, slip of the tongue, the free association, whatever they were, these were simply means to get behind this locked door, right? And it's almost the same way with Benjamin's method of juxtaposing things that don't quite necessarily appear to be related to each other to perhaps unlock one of these emanations in this way. And this is the Kabbalistic sense originally, that you cannot go directly at the task because the disclosure of the emanation is blocked.
Came to a pool. Benjamin had his hands in the water. I said, "You can't drink that. The water's filthy, contaminated. You'll get typhus." Benjamin turned to me and said, "Yes, perhaps. The worst that can happen is that I will die of typhus after crossing the frontier. The Gestapo won't be able to get me, and my manuscript will be safe. I do apologize," he said.
History breaks down history breaks down into images, not in stories.
There are probably as many Benjamins as there are readers, and one could say that as a triviality, but certainly I can't think of a thinker, that kind of malleable quality of Benjamin. I can't think of anyone else who approximates that. The way that Benjamin is used most in this country is to dip in and take a quotation out of context in support of any argument one can think of. And I used to take umbrage at this until, of course, I realized this is precisely Benjamin's own practice. To dip in and take a quotation out of context and mount it into a dialectical image and see what sparks fly.
Das Dritte Reich ist ein Zug.
Third Reich is a train that does not leave
bevor alle eingestiegen sind.
until everyone is on board.
The 25th of September 1940, this group arrived at the border post in Port Bow. This Frau Gerland, her son, 3 other women, refugiados, that they had met along the way. Berman, Lippmann, and Freund. And this sick and exhausted man was with them, this Walter Benjamin. They were showing us all these papers they had. They had a transit visa across España to Lisboa. They had a ticket from Lisboa. They had an entry visa into the US. What could we do? They didn't have a stamp from the French authorities allowing them to leave France. And without this, we could not let them in. This night, this Walter Benjamin in his hotel takes a large quantity of morphine compound, and in the morning he's dead. And this leads to all sorts of problems. He's a Jew, it's a Christian town, where's he going to be buried? It was very inconvenient.
All we've had up until now have been bits and pieces of Benjamin. We've just had fragments of him, which may seem like a perfectly appropriate thing to have of such a man who talks about fragments all the time and whose masterpiece, The Passagenfähig, is in fragments, but it's unsatisfactory. There's been a sense that there is an iceberg out there, but all we've had is the tip of the iceberg. And there is also the sense that we aren't really going to understand this man and his ideas unless we have a lot more of him. There's a lot. He is available in German. He is available in Italian. The Italian edition includes everything. Our edition will only include about 2/3 of the essays. But the important thing that we're trying to do with the 1,500 pages of essays is to reorganize them in a way that will be pretty easy for an Anglophone reader to come to understand them, because they're going to be put in chronological order. And so that one will be able to see that on one day Benjamin is writing a book review, and the next day he's writing a piece of metaphysical philosophy.
Critique is concerned with the truth content of a work of art, the commentary with its subject matter. The history of works of art prepares their critique, and this is why historical distance increases their power. If one views the growing work as a funeral pyre, its commentator can be likened to a chemist, its critic to an alchemist. While the former is left with wood and ashes as the sole object of his analysis, the latter is concerned only with the enigma of the flame itself, the enigma of being alive. Thus the critic inquires about the truth, whose living flame goes on burning over the heavy logs of the past, the light ashes of life gone by.
are the new titles, very popular new titles. It's really interesting. It's like a montage to see, you know, what's going on, what's juxtaposed to what. It's like the front page of a newspaper. For me, the most interesting reception of Benjamin is among those people who make culture. These are people in photography, people in film, people in all kinds of arts. Laurie Anderson actually reads about the angel of history from Benjamin in a rather bizarre constellation of things. But I mean, that's just an example of the way he's being appropriated by people who are cultural producers. And for me, that's much more refreshing than what goes on in the university most of the time, which is a pedantic way of bringing him back into the disciplines, and it's not much fun.
What's your book in the context of history?
Okay, come on and I'll show you where it's found. It's actually interesting because it's not just one place in the bookstore, and that's part of the history of the reception, in fact. Now, okay, literary criticism, for instance, now. That was the first reception of Benjamin in the United States. They were reading his essays on Proust, Kafka, particularly Baudelaire, and that's where you found most of the interest. So it's still here. Just on the other side here, cultural theory, critical theory. Well, critical theory is the old word, but cultural theory, cultural studies, that's something new. And it's going on in the universities in an attempt to bring mass culture into the canon, into the traditional disciplines in a way that justifies its study, and I think it's a good thing. So here it is among all the Benjamin translations I notice. It's not in philosophy, and that's weird to me because I thought I was writing a picture book of philosophy, that's what I called it. And yet, he's not taken, I mean, you don't find him next to Wittgenstein and these kinds of people. I mean, it just doesn't look right yet, right? For me, it was terribly important working on the Passagenwerk, which is incomplete, full of notes that have very, very vague references to how they fit into the whole that he, of course, never wrote. If I found an image that was relevant to that which he was describing, then suddenly I understood his description in a way I never could if I didn't have that image. And that's why I included, there are over 100 images in the book, and I included them not as illustrations of a point in the text, but as the point itself. The point itself.